My life begins on February 26th, 1997. I was born at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. I grew up in a small town and live in said small town to this day. For the first few years of my life, I was your average child. My father was a welder, while my mom always did various minimum wage jobs, usually working at various business stores or other businesses. When I was a child, I used to do things like average children did. I used to watch shows like Barney or Blue's Clues, or just use my imagination to do up various games around the house. I had a Super NES that I played from time to time, usually a game like Super Mario Kart or Mario Paint, but my life as a gamer had yet to truly be born. When I was 4 years old, my mother had told me that I would soon be going to a babysitter, something that greatly impacted my life. I made a very long term friend here, my babysitter's 2-year-old son Isaiah. We bonded quickly and spent many years as friends. It was here that I was also introduced to the Nintendo 64, and where I spent many great years playing games like Mario Party and Super Smash Bros., among others, and those two games quickly became favorites of mine. Near the end of my kindergarten year, my parents told me we'd be moving to a different house in the same community, where I would go on to spend the next 11 years of my life at. It was here that my parents also got me my own Nintendo 64, which I got such classics such as Super Smash Bros., Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, and a copy of Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut that I stupidly traded away without realizing the value. Yeah, that was one of the biggest mistakes of my life. My life grew from there, and I grew a huge fondness for video games. I was always sort of a socially awkward person, not really having too many friends in grade 1. After school, I always just played video games. For Christmas that year, I got a Nintendo GameCube and a Game Boy Advance SP, where I would go on to get many classic games such as Super Mario Sunshine and Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. Yeah, I was always an awkward kid. Not too much was different about my second grade year other than the games I was playing. I didn't have a whole lot of people in school, and I just kept this gaming persona as my only real friend. However, towards the end of the year, a new kid moved from another community. His name was CJ, for short. No one really talked to him, and I felt bad for him, so I started talking to him. We quickly began bonding, and we spent many days over the summer playing Pokemon Emerald. To this day, we've remained good friends. And for a few years after that, not a lot changed about my life. I was just your average kid, if not the smart kid in school with good grades. CJ began fitting in more as the years went on, but my life more or less stayed the same till about grade 4. During that time, I met someone in a new way this year when a girl I knew moved down the road from me. Her name was Leah. I decided to make friends with her and her sister, and we became good friends for a few years. We were both in swimming lessons at the time, and our parents drove me to lessons one night out of courtesy, where I also learned she was into Pokemon at the same time. We became very good friends. She gave me a VHS Mario 3 tape one year for Christmas. In grade 5, I got into this stupidly addictive game called Webkins, which was this game where you could basically buy a plush toy that comes to life with a code that you use online. It was a phase for everyone in school, but it died quicker than others than it did for me. It was during this time, however, that I met another friend of mine, Dallas. I'd known him for a few years, but it was through this game that we really got to know each other. The biggest change that came over that year, though, was my rise to the internet. For a year or so, I got into YouTube by recommendation of my mother, who one day showed me a video of the Mario theme played on an organ. In the related videos, I saw the opening of the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, which I watched because I hadn't seen that show in years. After that, I saw the thumbnail for Mama Luigi, which was from the Mario World cartoon. Something I didn't even know existed at that time. And the following morning, I got up super early to watch a bunch of episodes of Mario World, and ever since then, I've gone on YouTube almost every single day of my life. When I was in 5th grade, I decided to start up my YouTube channel, which evolved into something far greater than I ever expected back then. I originally wanted to name my username Masterman 2008. However, I changed it up last minute because by the time I went to actually make it, the username had been taken. So, Masterstarman stuck with me though. And it's been my persona ever since. I was heavily influenced by Maryland and Super Skarmory back in the day, and I set off to do my own commentated walkthroughs. Back in my personal life though, things got a bit rougher the following year. I was fighting a lot more with Dallas because I didn't get along with some of his older friends, and I was also fighting with CJ as well, and began to distance myself from Isaiah. When I began the channel, I promised Isaiah that we would one day do a co-op Let's Play of Super Mario Galaxy, and it's a promise to this day that has not been kept at all. For future reference, I'm still not opposed to the idea, but I don't see it happening. Things took a leap forward the following year, though. I began watching various YouTubers such as Chugga Conroy and Big Up on a Bus, two people I actively follow to this day. But a major change happened as I entered grade 7. I decided to join Air Cadets. I joined because my mother asked me to, and I decided to stick with it after the first few nights. I was one of 5 people who joined that year who permanently stayed with the program. And those people evolved into my best friends at one point in my life. My life began to change in 2010, in many ways for better and for worse. In the spring of 2010, Leah told me she was going to be moving to Northern Ontario. Despite going to her hometown, I haven't seen her since 2010. This was shrugged off by 13-year-old me at the time, but later in life, I grew to really, really miss her. And due to personal reasons with her and social media accounts, I've rarely kept touch with her at all, much to my displeasure. And honestly, if for whatever reason you're watching this, know that I miss you a lot. The last thing we ever did together was we went to the drive-in to watch Toy Story 3. I'm never going to forget that night for as long as I live. I played baseball for many years of my life, and the last year I really enjoyed my time playing it was the 2010 season. We had a younger team that year, and honestly, it felt like the last time I ever fully got along with several people on the team. I played ball all years of my life that I was capable from around age 6 onward, and I played for 2 additional years after 2010, and the years of 2011 and 2013, but neither year matched our chemistry of 2010. My 8th grade year was my last of my original school, which went by with 2 major advancements happening in my life. The first was setting my first major goal. Around this time, however, I grew a massive nerd crush from a character from Pokemon. This later grew into the first sign of depression in my life, as I could not stop thinking about her for most of the year, despite her being fictional. Around this time as well, I began talking with a guy on my bus named Alex. We bonded quickly over having played mutual games as a kid, namely the Kirby series. In early 2011, my life grew to the point where it was almost at its best. I was heavily influenced by Chugga Conroy, both in my life and in my Let's Plays. I was super excited when he went to the Music and Games Festival, aka MagFest, to the point where I wanted to go to conventions myself. It was my dream that I held on for several years. I continued to do Let's Plays, and had the time of my life up until the month of May. It was here that my depression for Dawn really took off. I was really upset, even in school. I wouldn't eat with anyone else, and I was talking to the counselor a lot, who never seemed to help. And what made matters worse was my attitude. I was a lot angrier and complained a lot. And a teacher actually threatened to not pass me if I didn't smarten up. My critical thinking came from watching too many reviews on YouTube as a kid, and admittedly, I was also becoming a massive asshole due to this behavior. In addition to this, I couldn't get along with Isaiah at this point. He was constantly talking about skateboarding, which was something I never got into, and his passion for video games had diminished by that time. However, by the time June rolled around, my life seemed to turn in a 180 direction. I finished my elementary school, making friends with Alex. The 8th grade students took a trip to Halifax, Nova Scotia with the other grade 8s from an intermediate school from another town. It was here that two interesting things happened. CJ and I started to distance ourselves apart a bit. Despite rooming with him and our friend Miles, who became one of my best friends through Cadets, CJ and I began to distance because of a mutual crush we had on someone at the time. Turns out she didn't really like either of us, and as time went on, I don't think either of us really cared all that much. But one morning at breakfast, we went to a restaurant where I sat by myself out of depression, while CJ sat with this other girl. However, some other girls from another school asked me to come sit with them. I said yes, and it seems like I was making friends. In truth, however, I really made some of my worst nightmares. After June ended, Alex stayed down for Canada Day. We recorded videos for the first time. With unfortunately neither LP ending up being finished for unfortunate circumstances. We became regular friends since then. A few days later, I went off to Greenwood, Nova Scotia for my first Air Cadets summer camp. I had to take 3 weeks off from baseball to come here, but I didn't exactly have a choice in the matter. Though, to be honest, the camp wasn't very good. The food sucked, and most people were sort of asses to me. I shrugged it off, but I was treated to some really, really heartbreaking news as I got home. My paternal grandmother, whom I was very close to, especially in the year leading up to this, had just passed away. I was the baby in my family. Despite being an only child, I was the baby. I had many cousins, but I was the youngest of my generation. My grandmother loved me for this and spent a lot of time with me. I didn't exactly know how to feel at this time, in which I was also mostly unable to record in my home due to renovations being done to my room. I recorded some one-off stuff with Dallas in my living room at that time, and despite the burden my family took, we also bounced back. However, one major change happened during that summer, and that was a real exposure to music. I've heard plenty of one-hit wonders on the radio over the years, but I was absolutely blown away hearing Bon Jovi's Livin' on a Prayer for the first time at camp. I began listening to more and more music, mostly from mainstream rock bands such as AC/DC, Guns N' Roses, and Bon Jovi. And I was ready to go into grade 9 at the time, where my life had changed immensely once again. The girls I sat with at breakfast in Halifax introduced me to several people around the school, most of whom were people I didn't really get along with. And the guys from Cadets quickly noticed how much I had changed. I didn't feel proud that I wanted to be in Cadets at all. I was really pissed at the way they ran the program that year, and despite my anger, I kept my annual perfect attendance record that year and, for whatever reason, never backed out at all. I was changing into someone I wasn't. After slow dancing with someone at a school dance, a rumor began surfacing that I was going to ask said girl out. However, that was the last thing my good nature wanted to do. But people began pressuring me and her to the point where I told her I never wanted to date her. Not because she wasn't pretty or anything, but at the same time I asked her to dance, I saw somebody I absolutely fell in love with. I had no idea someone so pretty could actually exist. And she was in my same class as that. However, things between us didn't work out at all. I was far, far too infatuated around her to really say a word. I had no idea how to react around her. When I did, I took things too far. My grade 9 year was spent entirely around this crush, and it didn't work out at all. During this time, I actually befriended someone, though, that meant a lot more to me than you'd think. And she was the first real friend I thought I had since Leah, as well as the first I could really talk to her about how I felt. I'll call her T for short. She tried helping me during my crush, but really to no avail. My summer continued where I went away to North Bay, Ontario for 6 weeks for another camp. Unbeknownst to me, I later learned Leah lived not far from the North Bay area, and I was honestly quite heartbroken again. Going into grade 10, I actually had no idea what to expect. I had an extremely difficult first semester where I found the workload far heavier than other schools, and with little to no warning, I was quite honestly frustrated and I learned what I didn't want to do. However, things rolled around really well for my second semester. T and I spent the second semester almost entirely together, which comprised of computers, gym, math, and the only difference being the kind of French we took. We bonded a lot in this time where she helped me with another crush I had at the time. However, it was also during this time I fulfilled my lifelong dream of meeting Chugga Conroy as I went to Boston, Massachusetts for PAX East 2013. However, towards the end of the year, T learned that I wasn't all mice and angels, and we began fighting. For most of the summer, I spent it on YouTube, and it was the last time I really enjoyed YouTube for what it was. My grade 11 year, many things changed, and not for the better. My workload was back to being stupid difficult. My relationship with T started changing drastically. Most of the girls I ate breakfast with that one time began to hate me for no reason. I was just becoming more arrogant and honestly a bigger asshole to be around. But I was also changing too. I started listening to many more musicians, and my taste began to broaden by this point. I decided to pick up a guitar and learn it for the first time in my life. And, well, I sucked at first. But I decided to stick with it. Music slowly began changing my life, and before long, I was stuck researching bands like Queen, Led Zeppelin, and the Beatles, and later evolving my music beyond just a casual listener to becoming something that's a part of my life. Unfortunately, though, music couldn't help me with my depression. I'd wanted to do a Let's Play with T and some other friends, something she agreed to do despite not being too big into video games, but it never came to be. It was something I actually put a lot of energy into doing, but it just never came to be, and in the end, the project never happened. And my depression became worse. I felt like I was hanging around the wrong people in school. My friends weren't really my friends. They weren't nice to me, and nobody ever really talked to me. Girls that I thought were really nice or pretty never wanted to talk to me, and I was just really hurt beyond all belief. I actually didn't see what the point of living was. Yeah, I got seriously depressed by this point. But to add to this, I felt like my life had already been fulfilled. My dream was fulfilled. I had no idea what else I wanted to do with my life. And one night, I made the best and worst decision of my life simultaneously. I texted T and told her about my depression and told her that I was in a very dangerous state of mind, possibly the state of hurting myself or worse. She told me to wait until the next day and not to do anything stupid that night. I told off a counselor the next day, which in hindsight probably wasn't the best thing to do, but a few minutes later I got called back up and I was thinking it was going to be something serious, but it was more or less to talk to T immediately afterwards. In a way, she more or less saved my life. However, at the cost of doing permanent damage to our friendship. She didn't want to talk to me for a long time after that, and she didn't. I can say that I had a crush on her for a while, and I really wasn't sure what to do that summer. I kept buying albums and learning more stuff on the guitar, and the following year I just cut back on the stuff that I knew was important. I realized who my friends were at the time and began hanging around with people from Cadets. I rarely talked to anybody from the previous year and just focused on getting through my senior year of high school. At the end of the year, I apologized to T for what had happened, and around the same time, I played an all-acoustic show in the school cafeteria, my first ever live performance. And it took a lot of people off guard that I began playing guitar more than focusing on my own Let's Plays. In the end, I became really heavy into music, and I graduated high school. However, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life. If I had another dream to come up, it would be become a musician and record an album of my own. And although I lived with my parents for most of my life, a lot of my own strengths coming from inside me. They influence me and have never done any harm to me, but I've become who I am by my own willpower. My life has seen many ups and downs, but ultimately, I don't know if I'd really want my life any other way. Life's a game. That's all it is. I've been Zachary Vincent Jenkins, aka Masterstarman, and this was my draw of my life. Thank you for watching. I apologize for some of the crummy drawings here, but I hope you enjoyed. I've been on YouTube for 8 years now. And it feels quite incredible to say that.